welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian, with the programs coming to you live from Beijing. We turn to a serious problem the world is facing right now, climate change. Well, that's on the front line a lot, but the worsening side effects of the global warming has stressed the importance of protecting the environment. But against all international pressure last week, the Trump administration officially began its long-announced process of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement by giving written notifications to the UN Secretary General. Climate change and biodiversity are among the top priorities of the UN, though. One of the biggest obstacles is tackling global challenges is the lack of global governance. This is where institutions such as the United Nations Environmental Program will attempt to fill the gap. The organization is led by Inger Anderson. She told me that yes, the house is on fire, and yes, the fight is hard, but a lot is being done, and certainly a lot should be done. Take a look. Ms. Anderson, welcome to CGTN in Beijing.
Thank you so much.
I love this little courtyard of yours.
Isn't it just gorgeous?
It's beautiful. I hope it will be as peaceful as it is, but we have a lot of issues these days.
We do.
Climate change. UNEP's role, Ms. Anderson, has been warning the world about the house on fire. But even after repeated warning, you do not see governments coordinate in the best way. What is your take about the current situation?
Well, we've been warning about the house being on fire because it is. IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, has come out very clearly and indicated that we must take action, that the scenarios against which we are working are scenarios that require us to take action to preserve the nature, to preserve the world as we know it. And IPBES, the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystems, similarly has said that we're standing to lose a million species out of 7.8 million unless we take action. So yes, the house is on fire. In a sense, we've been taking nature for granted. We've assumed that we can put things into the atmosphere, consume and discard our wastes, our carbon, into the atmosphere in such a way that and that nature would continue to absorb it, that the atmosphere would continue to absorb it, which it will not.
But you certainly notice other federal governments, particularly some specific ones, turn away from the issue of climate change. Now, how would you deal with that? I mean, in your position?
I think whilst we certainly have seen some countries having second thoughts, actually it's only one country. And
it's not second thought, it's turning away, totally.
So at this point, we have at the same time in all countries, massive commitments at the country level, at the city level, at the state level, at the industry level, at the science level. So it's a complex world we live in. And I think if we assume that the world is on a linear path, we have been mistaken.
So, Ms. Anderson, you would assume that countries, governments, civil societies, industries would learn from the best example rather from the worst example. Is that what you would assume would be the case? No. Because sometimes the worst example did lead people to lower places.
What I think we should assume is that this is hard. It's actually not even an assumption, it's a fact. This is hard. And it being hard, therefore, there will be interest. But here's the thing, 10 times as many people in the US work on green renewable energy than work in the coal sector. These people will vote too. These people will have a voice too. These people will engage too. It's a complex situation, but we must understand, and that's why Paris highlights, leave no one behind. And in some countries we did leave some people behind. We did not take into account the fact that we needed to make sure that we need to lift people out of poverty, we needed to create jobs for everybody, and the transition is complex.
Sometimes we are confused because there are so many buttons we can push on, and therefore people will say, so which one? I'm losing my direction here. What do you say? Limited resources, limited attention.
4 things. We have to decouple our economy from, on the one hand, growth, which we want, from environmental degradation, circularity. Secondly, we have to decarbonize. We invest in new, renewable, smart energy. Third, we need to detoxify, take the toxicity, the chemicals out of our environment. And fourth, invest in nature. Nature's infrastructure is part of the solution, nature-based solutions. These four, all of them, at the same time, that's what we need to do. Because we will soon be 10 billion on this good planet. And if we don't, we will find that there will be today 1.3 billion people living in extreme poverty. We need to lift these people out of poverty, but we need to do that without the environmental consequences.
Nature-based solutions has always been one idea that's dear to your heart and your organization. At this point, which stage are we in? What do you think is the most important emphasis now we can push this thing in a more efficient way?
We have 2 billion hectares of degraded land on this planet. 2 billion hectares. We have degraded more land than double the size of China. That land is lying there ready to be taken back into productive use. Think of it. Nature is very forgiving. You invest in nature, nature invests right back in humankind.
We learned that through the smog issue here.
Exactly.
As long as we pay attention to the environment, see, we do have fresh air today.
Indeed. So the first action on nature-based solutions, we put landscapes back into work, degraded land back into working landscapes. That will bring us 4 types of benefits: carbon storage, biodiversity, growth, agriculture, production, timber, what have you, and general well-being. Because when we are in nature, we feel much happier.
It's easier said than done, though, Ms. Anderson, because if you look at just planting the trees, which is also one of the things your organization, UNEP, has been working on, it's one of those branches of solutions only, and yet itself, worldwide, mega project.
Yes, but it's not one project to be done. The beauty of this is that China is already doing it. The beauty of this is Ethiopia is already doing it. The beauty of this is Africa has come together on the Great Green Wall that they are constructing, planting. The beauty of this is that in the Northern Hemisphere, the forests are expanding by themselves. So there's lots that's already happening. What we want is a global effort to ensure that everybody leans in. It can be you in your backyard, or it can be a massive tree planting exercise.
I did my annual tree planting, by the way. There's a campaign going on in China. I always do that every year. Good for me. But, you know, I know you're an optimist because you have to be, and you really need to be in your mission. But at the same time, may I, Ms. Anderson, remind you of the reality that we are struggling with the priorities in the world. Geopolitics, for example, lack of future plan of global governance have made all of us dizzy in a way. So whether environmental protection, climate change will remain on top of the list as a priority as they were 5 years ago, for example, it's a big question mark.
Unfortunately, I would say it is not a question mark, because if we don't prioritize it, climate will come knocking on everybody's door.
But we always want to be firefighters. We never want to think ahead. That's the human nature too.
But you see, the point here is now we are already firefighting. As I said, the house is on fire. And when you are in the fire, with these increasingly hard hits by nature, then we will stay committed.
You're also dealing with a house when the institutions are being questioned and being tumbled. It's not just the...
No, the institutions are not being questioned or tumbled. It's normal that people leave, they get other opportunities, they may get sick. It's a normal situation. The good thing is we are 7 billion plus on this good planet. There are plenty of good people. If I leave my job, there are plenty of good people who can come in my place. Because the UN is strong. We are turning 75 next year. We have been around for a long time, and so we are not going anywhere because member states are committed. So personalities might change, but our mission and our mandate, which is given to us by member states, is given. And it's difficult, it's complicated, there are different views, geopolitics, but there's only one way we can deal with it, and that is a multilateral platform. That is the United Nations, and that's what I work for.
near horizon, 2020, there is an issue about biodiversity. The world was expected to adopt a post-2020 biodiversity international framework. Now, China is also going to host the conference of biodiversity as the host country. Is that possible, that framework?
Of course. Look, in 2010 in Japan, we adopted a 10-year framework referred to as there are 20 targets, referred to as the Aichi targets, where we said by 2020 we will have reached this particular point. The truth is we will not have reached all of the targets of the 2010 framework when we meet in Kunming in Yunnan province in 2020 under the Chinese presidency. And so we have to reflect, why was that?
Why is that, do you think?
Yes, that's what I'm getting to. There are many things that we have learned in this decade. In Paris, what did we learn? We learned that it was no longer enough just having the environment ministers speak about climate. Who did you need? You needed energy, transport, finance, industry, etc. And that was what got the Paris climate deal. So, thinking about biodiversity, what are the drivers of loss? It's agriculture, industry, etc. So we need everybody to be part of the solution, and that is entirely possible. You can do nature-positive agriculture, you can do nature-positive fisheries, nature-positive infrastructure, and it's a lot less expensive than doing much of the chemical agriculture that we do today. So there's some real opportunities, and if we get those next targets right, then when we meet in 2030 to look at where we have come, then we will see that we managed to get more measurable targets and more implementable targets.
Did you just realize, Ms. Anderson, what you have for you already, a plan in a way, because you have to engage in that sense all different kinds of organizations within the UN system in order to incorporate all of these important players. But you also have to engage directly with country members of the United Nations, while at the same time engage with the specific area which you are working on a constant basis, the specific counterparts. So that's a very complicated layers of engagement, and you have to do it before the conference begins.
Multilateralism is complex, so let's not oversimplify. I also happen to be the chair of the Environmental Management Group of the United Nations, which brings together the 53 UN agencies, and we've decided that for this coming year we're just going to focus on biodiversity.
Do you talk that way to them during the meetings?
I probably do, but we have to focus on biodiversity because we need to support the incoming chair, China, the incoming presidency, and we obviously need to ensure that we have the solutions. The good thing is that there are many other parties that are non-state actors that are leaning in and providing solutions. And so we need to corral all of that energy to ensure that that can be part of the solution in Kunming.
Talking about youth, which I did notice that key word in your earlier answer, but we have also noticed that the youth in at least some economies have been disillusioned. You see what's going on also in the streets in some parts of the world, and they are uncertain about the future. However, this is also the generation of youth that is very passionate about the environment. Just as, you know, a coincidence back in the 60s and 70s, isn't it? So how do you see, you know, the key to engage the youth on the environment issue, on climate change? What about institutional building vis-a-vis just personal enthusiasm?
So I think if you and I think back to when we were young, there is a degree of sense that I need to fix the world because it's not, and I love that. I mean, I just think that the enthusiasm of youth is an important enabler. Now, we also need to base it in science and the realities and all of that. So I think our young people are calling us out. Maybe it can be sounding naive in some quarters, but there's truth in it. And so we need to hear it, and we need to ensure that that voice of clarity, of a child's clarity, is one that we then translate into adults' action. That's what we have to do right now. I had the pleasure and privilege of speaking to students at Tsinghua University, and it was the environmental school, and it was just so impressive to see many young men, but also many young women, super engaged and so competent for the next generation of leaders that we will see in this world.
What about China and other developing and emerging economies today on the cause? Who will be the leader or the leading force for the future in this regard? Ms. Anderson.
I mean, I wouldn't want to pick one leader, because I'd hope we'll have a chorus of leaders, which I think is what we are beginning to see. You know, Indonesia is speaking up very much on rainforest issues. That's an Indonesia issue as well as other countries, obviously. India has been struggling with air issues and are reaching for solutions, but have made great strides on banning plastic. So each country has seen leaders in the last few years. This country, of course, we're sitting here under a blue sky with clean air in a country that didn't have this 10 years ago. So phenomenal leaning in on clarity of vision. Here we speak about ecological civilization, and we are also having ecology in the garden with some flies. So at any rate, we speak about ecological civilization, which is a beautiful way of saying living in harmony with nature and turning green to gold. So I think these kind of leaders that we are seeing that are speaking to the imperative of environmental stewardship, that's what we need to encourage.
Yeah, but you see also interesting change going on. At the same time, when developing economies are paying more attention to climate change, environmental protection issues, the global supply chain has also been, shall I say, changing as a result of various factors, including geopolitics. So how do you see, Ms. Anderson, that these two combined would eventually work to certain kinds of results for us?
Well, I think you need two things. You need a carrot and you need the stick.
Yes.
And so the carrot is many ways. You and I, we vote with our dollar bills, or when we go shopping, we are voting because we can buy this or we can buy that. Shareholders of companies will demand certain things. Nobody wants to be the shareholder of a dirty company that's poisoning people. And companies put in place, like in this country, environmental regulations. And we will do this also on the global supply chain, because more and more regulations in countries that are importing parts will be such that they have to have a certain degree of standards of environmental integrity. So I think we will see that these two things, well, we are seeing that these two things are coming together.
And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Good night.